Welcome back to Crambox Weekly. I'm Carl, your host, and I'm joined again by my best friend, Vanessa. This time we are doing a remote show because kids and their homework. Yeah, if it weren't for the kids, would have gotten away with it. Anyways, Scooby-Doo, Scooby-Doo, huh? Anyways, we are going to be talking today about the Electoral College and the primary system and the way that the primaries work and how that process goes on. And Vanessa, I'm sure you're going to want to have us touch on the 2024 primaries where Kamala Harris got nominated and appointed as the Democratic nominee without a single vote in her favor. So, with that being said, let's get started.
Our previous show, we had touched base right at the very end about how the Electoral College, how actually we're not really voting. It's more of the Electoral College is voting for it. So how does that all work? And I guess my question would be, is that why you can win the popular vote but still lose the election?
Short answer, yes. Longer answer is a little bit more complicated. Right now, there's an individual that goes by the name of Dean Withers. He's a left-leaning podcast personality, and he went on a show that was run by Jubilee. It's the whole Surrounded podcast show now. It's actually on YouTube. You can go watch it. It's an interesting one. And he sits in front of Charlie Kirk, and he looks at Charlie Kirk and he says, "Can we agree that the Electoral College is DEI, but for Republican states or the flyover states?" Charlie Kirk couldn't wrap his head around it, but the reality is that it is in a nuanced kind of way that's kind of what the Electoral College is. And the reason I say that is because too long didn't read it type situation. Electoral College came about as a compromise. And the reason that it was a compromise is because back in the day, like the good old days of Jeffy Jefferson and Alexander Hamilton, um, there was a concern that those in the North, the northern states, because they were more populated, would have a much larger say in the way that presidents got elected. And so, in addition to the whole three-fifths compromise, which was the compromise that identified each slave in the South as three-fifths of a person for the purpose of the census. I don't know how they came to three-fifths, but that was their number. But they also created the Electoral College. The way that the Electoral College worked is that each state gets a number of electors based off of their population. So in the northern states, they had more, they would have wound up with more than the South without the three-fifths compromise. With the three-fifths compromise, it kind of balanced it out. And the idea there was that the population was going to elect the individuals who are going to elect the president. Long story short, right? It was believed that the mob, the us, the real people, didn't have an understanding of politics and really weren't educated enough to select the president themselves. And so what we needed to do is we needed to select people who were more mature, more in the know, who could then go and select the president for us.
So, kind of like hypothetically speaking, if they're gonna vote because they're more educated than us or how they see fit, couldn't they just say, "Oh, well, they said that, so and so should be president, and therefore we're gonna go that way," even though we may not have said that?
So it's ironically that is a thing, right? So there was a time where the electors themselves didn't have to adhere to the public vote. And they could vote based off of however they wanted to vote, despite the electoral process. To add to that, the farther back in history you go with the nation, you start to see that, you know, we kind of talked about this last week with the amendments. It was people, white male individuals who owned land that could vote. And then it became
Mhm.
all men that could vote. And then it became men and women, or excuse me, it became men regardless of race that could vote. And then it became men and women could vote. So it progressed, right, as we went through. And so the long story short, the reason I'm saying that is because the there was a time where the electors generally just kind of decided things on their own in like a smoky back room. They would just say, "Hey, yep, this is us." But nowadays, there are laws passed in states that force the electors to vote the way that the people of the state voted.
Okay. So how do how do they get appointed to the Electoral College? Like, are these actual real people, or is it just they say, "Hey, majority voted here," like Ohio voted for, Trump or whatever. This many votes go to him. Are there actual real people, or are they just like pretend?
So you've heard of the fake elector scheme that happened in 2020 when Donald Trump was trying to get a different slate of electors
We'll
to
pretend like I did.
right. Okay. Well, he put this scheme into place to contest the election, contest the results in the states, and then line up electors who were favorable to him so that they could then turn around and vote for him as part of the college against the will of the people. Um, so I guess to answer your question, they are real people. And the way that they're selected is party based and state based. So the party will actually have their own electors ready to go. Like they'll select their electors and they'll send them to the governor, and the governor uh, will then recognize them as lawful electors, and then they will be the ones that actually make the vote happen. Most states nowadays have restricted electors, which means that they're restricted to the popular vote. So whatever the popular vote says goes. And that is more of a thing, or that is an important piece, because when you look at other states, or excuse me, there's a small percentage of states that actually have it set up so that the winner takes all, right? And then there's another percentage of the states that has it set up to take proportionally. The proportional elector distribution process is a lot different than the winner takes all, because the winner takes all, like California has 52 electors, right? And
No, it's a
if
lot.
right, and if say Trump were to win California, he would take all 52 electors,
Mhm.
right? Despite the fact that maybe he won the popular vote by like 10%. And in a
So even though he would take all of those, even though technically the popular vote wasn't necessarily his,
even though
in
it
a
wasn't
sense.
100% his, right?
Right. So
So
it's not like they don't split it. They don't say, "Okay, well, here, we have 52, 10% should go to this person, this other amount." So it's all or nothing.
correct. Wisconsin does it differently, right? They are a proportional process. And then
Mhm.
there's one other state that actually has a an undesignated elector, so they kind of sit out there in as part of the state. They're not associated with any specific count, and so that one person will go to the winner, and then they split the rest of them based off of the percentage of the vote.
So I was reading that there's been, I think it was 2 presidents that have won the election without winning the popular vote. Can that be contested? Like, can it be like, "Hey, listen, they won the popular vote. They should have been the president." No, it can't be contested at all.
No, no, it cannot. Matter of fact, George
Hmm.
Bush won the Electoral College twice and failed to achieve the popular vote both times.
Baby or daddy.
Baby. Donald Trump,
Mhm.
during his first campaign, right, when he won the first time in 2016, he won the Electoral College, but failed to win the popular vote. And the reason for that is it goes back to that DEI process, right? In states like Wisconsin, you and I have a much stronger say in who we want our state to put up for president because there's less of us, which means that our direct line to our elector is higher because even though there's less of them, the proportionality is different. So my voice is louder than, say, the voice of someone in California.
How did Oh, sorry.
And so as a result, because of the winner takes all system, right? The winner of California could take all 52 votes. The winner in, say, North Carolina, I forgot how many we have. I think it's like six. We'll take North Carolina. Maybe it's 29. I don't remember. I'll put it in the notes and maybe over here. But in North Carolina, they have a winner takes all as well, right? But because if Donald Trump were to win North Carolina, South Carolina, and the way that he did it in the first part is that he won a lot of smaller states. And because he won
Right.
more smaller states than there are big states, he was able to retain the number of votes that he needed within the Electoral College to get the nomination for president, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does, and I I still don't understand how, like, I get where, like, people go to vote, like, the primaries is what they're called, to determine who's gonna run for president
Mhm.
for whatever party. How did Kamala Harris end up just I understand that Joe Biden was he was getting out. How did she end up getting nominated without any primary?
The short answer, right, is I guess she did it because we have a misunderstanding of how the primaries work. That's the short answer. The longer answer is that the primaries actually didn't become a thing until about the 1970s. Before that, the way that it worked is that the party bosses would get together in like a smoke filled room and they would select the person that they wanted to be the presidential candidate for their party without input from the people, without input from the states. I mean, a lot of these people, the way that they set it up is that they would bring in the party bosses from each state and they would all vote based off of that. Matter of fact, there wasn't even campaigning really until about the 1950s. Like the president didn't campaign for himself.
Okay, so I have a problem with this campaign thing. One, I don't think that anybody should be able to have a concert by like top pop stars to determine, oh, hey, come vote for me because I got Beyonce. Like, I'm sorry, that is irrelevant. That has nothing to do with our politics. That has nothing to do with anything. Why is that legal?
For the same reason that Elon Musk going to Maryland, was it Maryland? No, Pennsylvania, and standing on stage and handing out $1 million checks to people who registered and voted for President Trump, right? It's legal because in a way it circumvents a loophole because the way that it was legal for Elon Musk is that it was a lottery. It wasn't you vote for Trump and then you get it. It was you vote for Trump, you put your name in a hat, and then if your name is drawn, you win $1 million. With regards to the concert, well, that whole process and the whole Beyonce thing, it was it's designed to get out the vote, right? And because what the Democratic Party learned is that the way to get out the vote is to have headliner celebrities come out and perform and get people energized and ready to go out and vote. It doesn't always work that way. Some people will just show up for the concert because generally it's a free concert and then they'll go home. So to answer your question, it is legal in the same way that it was legal for Elon Musk to do the $1 million giveaway.
First off, How come I wasn't included in this $1,000,000 giveaway? Because I would have really liked to known that it was going on and happening.
Well, I think Pennsylvania's primaries happen after North Carolina's primaries. So there's
Yeah.
that. And then on top of
Oh, this
that,
was for the
no, I'm
primaries
sorry,
that
you're
he
right. So for the general election, you're right. I stand corrected. I think the issue was that he was up in Pennsylvania. So it was for Pennsylvania
mm,
voters only. And the reason he was up in Pennsylvania is because Pennsylvania typically goes to the Democrats.
state. Yeah,
And so he went up there in order to buy the vote in support of Trump, and it worked. Like it got he was able to secure that state for Trump.
that's ridiculous.
He tried it again during a state judicial race and was totally and completely lost, like terribly
Mhm.
lost. But getting back to the original question, the primaries came about because of concerns about the whole party boss process. Interestingly enough, it was the Democrat primary in 1968 that saw Hubert Humphreys get elected or get nominated, and that resulted in the change with the Democrat side, right? So the Democrats actually basically what happened is they adjusted the way that they do their primaries. Pushed they pushed more effort down to the states, and they put that responsibility on the states to provide them with their their delegates. If you'll stick with me, right? So delegates
Yeah, yeah,
deals
yeah.
with primaries, whereas electors deals with the electoral college. And so I'm trying to be quick here, but I'm stumbling over my words. The, the long and short of it is that the reason that Humphreys was selected is because even though he didn't do so hot in the primaries, right? In 68, he still got the nomination for president after the party bosses and the delegates did their thing. And there's a whole bunch of things that went into it, right? Like RFK senior, like the Robert F. Kennedy's brother, JFK's brother. He was assassinated in California while he was on the stump in order to win the primary election. And the competitor to RFK dropped out of the race when RFK jumped into the race because he knew he couldn't beat RFK. And so all the delegates that were assigned to him and then all the delegates that were assigned to RFK, they all came together, and then Humphreys got it, even though he didn't win nearly as many delegates as the other two. And so they did a lot of adjusting in 68, 69, which got us to the point now where the Democrats actually have a top down type structure, right? So the National Democratic Party tells the state Democratic parties, hey, you're going to run primaries instead of caucuses. You're going to make sure that you have your delegates decided and determined. The delegates will fall in line with whoever it is that is elected based off popular vote, yada, 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 blah, blah, blah. In addition to that, 15% of all the delegates at the National Convention are super delegates. And super delegates include all sitting Democrat governors, all sitting Democrat senators, all sitting Democrat representatives. Those individuals are not selected by the state or by us. In fact, those individuals go in there and technically they're not supposed to vote during round one, they vote during round two. So they basically sit there as a tiebreaker. But in the case of Kamala Harris, they all voted for her, and all the delegates that were allotted to Biden and the other two major candidates that ran in 2024, they all flocked to Kamala Harris despite not having ran for election during the primaries. So I expect that we will wind up seeing the Democrats adjust how they do things again to prevent something like that happening, because they have shown a tendency in the past to adjust the way that they do things to make it more fair and more equitable for the general population. Whereas the
Yeah, like, it woulda
Republicans,
made sense. I was gonna say it would made sense that when Biden decided to drop out, up there and not run for presidency, shouldn't it should have went to the person, the runner up to that, is how I would see it. Is like, okay, the main one came out, you were second in line, here you go, move up. Kind of like if the president dies, vice president goes back up. Just makes sense. So,
So you would think that, right? But if you think about it from that perspective, you wind up with a scenario where we have another Hubert Humphrey, right? Which is a guy who did terrible during the primaries, and then all of a sudden he is nominated for president. Um,
right.
to that point, in 2024, there were four challengers for the Democratic spot.
Mhm.
There was Phillips, Palmer, Williamson, and in a couple of states, there was a rash of uncommitted, right? So Democrats would go in, and because they were protesting the way that the Biden administration was handling the Israeli Gaza war, they voted uncommitted in the primaries,
So,
which was basically a throwaway vote. It was a protest vote, but those were the four candidates, right?
mm,
Um, and so I don't I don't know who Phillips is. I don't know who Palmer is, and I definitely don't know who Williamson is.
right.
And
So they
because
went with a more popular person.
well, they went with the person that was on the ticket, right? Because Biden was running with Harris. And so what they
Mhm.
did is they said, well, since Biden, even though he's the headliner for the ticket and has dropped out, we don't have enough time to run a primary because we have to have the nomination to the states as an official by August, and it's the middle of July. So we're going
Yeah,
to do the next best thing, which is, hey, Kamala Harris, you're VP now. We're throwing you into the fray in order to be able to run. And because she was known, it was easier for her to spin up and jump into the general election process.
right. So let me ask you this. I know, there's Democrat, Republican, and then you have your independents and everything. Wouldn't it be better if our president was running and wasn't part of the party lines? Like, what if he was just like not affiliated with Democrat or Republican and was just an independent person? Because at then you can't get swayed by the other ways.
So there is a movement right now that is going through the process of um, becoming more formalized, and that's called the jungle vote. And the way
Okay.
that it works is the top two candidates, right? So everyone in the primaries, they all run against each other, right? So it's Republicans, Democrats, doesn't matter. They're all part of one big happy family. And
Right.
the state will then take the two that win first and second place in the primaries, and they will use the general elections as the a runoff, so to speak, election. And so those two will run against each other. The downside to this is that one is not held at the presidential level just because there's a whole bunch of things in the Constitution that dictate how the presidential election is run and handled. But there's also an issue of making sure that we get this right. And the challenge to this is right now, because we have parties, you can wind up with two Republicans running against each other in the general election. So then the Democrats don't get a say or don't get a voice because they've been completely wiped out in the primaries.
Has that ever happened?
It happened in Alaska last year,
Okay.
and I believe it was a senatorial election. But
But for
the,
president, there's never been a Republican versus Republican, Democrat, Democrat?
no, no, and not even like not even in the original process, right? When we started to look at our president and vice president, I mean, there was some shady stuff that happened during the first couple of general presidential elections, and it wasn't everyone's
Mhm.
going to the polls and doing this stuff. It was literally behind closed doors. The Congress was making the decisions, or members of Congress were making the decisions. And so the way that they would work it is that they would manipulate the vote so that they could make sure that only certain people would get into office, and then they would wander around and be like, hey, you can't vote for this person, you need to vote for this person. Because there was a lot of concern, actually. There was a concern that President Washington wasn't going to get elected because of the way that the electoral count was had. There was concern that he would miss it because he would be undercut by someone else who was in line to get the presidency. And as luck had it, he managed to pull through, but there was a chance, and without the willings and dealings, he probably could have lost the seat. My point being, no, there has not been a Republican versus Republican running in the general election.
Yeah, it fascinates me that, we can't, like everybody's like, "Oh, well, Congress has, if Congress is Republican and the Senate's Republican and the president's Republican, everything's going to pass. There's no checks and balances in a way." So why wouldn't you make it to where this is Republican, this is Democrat, okay, this is nothing. Like this is an independent, so therefore they're not working together in the same having the same agenda.
Because it's not feasible. I mean, if you look at the Supreme Court, right? The Supreme Court is supposed to be a nonpartisan sitting branch. That's why they have
Right.
lifetime appointments. And the reason for the lifetime appointment is to prevent the partisanship that racks the lower election process. They're appointed not um, because they don't need to have to run a campaign. And if they had to run a campaign, they would have to go partisan. The idea is that when they get put into that position, they're there in that position for life, which means they don't have to worry about the public getting pissed off at them and losing their seat. They don't have to worry about the president getting pissed off at them and firing him. They are there in order to ensure constitutionality of our laws. The problem is that over the last 30 to 40 years, and you can even go back and see more, like, I mean, you look at Rehnquist and his court, but the problem is that over time, what has happened is that these presidents have been selecting the most qualified conservative or the most qualified progressive justice
Right,
based off
instead
of
of
their
somebody
ruling.
that's
Qualified.
just yeah, that's ridiculous. Yeah, 'cause, they are appointed by the president, so as long as they meet the president's agenda that he wants to get passed, he's gonna put them in. That's mm,
Yeah.
that's
So
terrible.
we've got a system of checks and balances, right? And we have a process by which to do this thing, right? And next week, what we're going to be talking about is the why. Because right now, we've talked about the history, we've talked about the amendments, we've talked about how voting power exists, but the why is going to be important. And what I don't want to leave today with, or this week with, is for the listeners to think, oh, well, my vote doesn't matter, so I'm just not going to go out and vote. Because that's the first thing that will irk me, and like I'll keel over and die of a heart attack every time I hear it.
Right.
But you know, the downside is that when it comes to the president, we elect the people that elect the people. And that's just the unfortunate process of our system. And the purpose and the reason behind all of that is what happened over 200 years ago when we had our first round of elections. And it was because of the Constitution and the lessons that we learned that came out of the Articles of Confederation and the way that the process worked that resulted in the system that we have now. It sucks. It's not perfect, but it's better than what we could have. Well, with that being said, once again, I'm Carl, your host. I'm here with Vanessa, and we are bringing you a look at voting rights and how voting rights have evolved over time. And with that being said, and with next week being the last week of October, we are going to be covering the why, right? We've covered the gloom and doom, but now we're going to talk about the why. Why is voting important? So we hope you stay tuned for us next week, and we'll see you in 7 days.